Chair, we are now live on YouTube.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome everyone to tonight's virtual Response and Recovery Committee. A particular welcome to those members of the public who are watching on YouTube. My name is Councillor Caroline Kerr and I will be chairing this evening's meeting. Just a bit of housekeeping. Can I remind everyone please to turn their mobile phones to mute. The meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. A copy of this recording will be available shortly after the meeting. Sorry, I forgot to mute my own phone by the sound of it. A copy of the recording will be made available shortly after the meeting. Members are reminded to keep their microphones on mute unless they're called to speak and are asked to keep their cameras on if possible, particularly during any vote so that the public can see that you're voting. Should it be necessary to go into private session, members are also advised to leave their cameras on to provide assurance regarding the privacy of their proceedings. Members can indicate they wish to speak by using the chat function, but please don't use the chat function for any other purpose to ask questions because they won't be answered and they can't be seen by the public. So I just want to start by introducing everybody. The councillors who are present are members of this committee. I will now introduce those councillors and officers and I'd be grateful if you could indicate your presence, please. So Councillor Fiona Bolt.
Good evening.
Good evening. Councillor Emily Davey.
Good evening.
Councillor Kevin Davis.
Evening.
Evening. Councillor Lorraine Dunstan.
Good evening.
Councillor Ed Fram.
Hi there. Good evening.
Evening. Councillor Hilary Gander.
Good evening.
Good evening. Councillor Andreas Kirsch.
Good evening.
Councillor Rebecca Moll.
Good evening.
Councillor Anita Shaper.
Good evening.
And Councillor John Sweeney.
Good evening.
Councillors who are not members of the committee but are in attendance this evening are Councillor Sharon Falchtakoff-Sumner and Councillor Margaret Thompson. We also have a number of officers in attendance tonight. They're present to give an overview of reports and advice during the meeting. Their cameras and microphones will be switched off unless they're called upon to speak on matters other than the provision of procedural advice. There is provision under Procedure Rule 27 within the Council's constitution to permit councillors who do not sit on a committee to address the meeting if permission is granted by the committee. We've received a request from Councillor Falchtakoff-Sumner to do so this evening, and she would like to speak on 3 substantive items. Are members happy to permit this, or do we need to go to a vote? If anyone is not happy, please could you indicate on the chat function? And I don't see any indications, so I will take it as read that Councillor Falchtakoff-Sumner is at liberty to ask her questions when the moment comes. So let's go to item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. Fiona, are there any apologies or substitutions?
Yes, Chair. I have apologies from Councillors Rowena Bass, Tim Cobbett and Diane White. Councillors Ed Fram, Lorraine Dunstan and Anita Shaper are substituting respectively.
Thank you very much. Let's move on now to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Members are asked to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other non-pecuniary interests relevant to items on the agenda. Do members have any declarations of interest? Please indicate using the chat function. And I don't see any, so I think we can move on to item 3, which is the dementia care nursing home development. I'm going to introduce this item. In May, a report to this committee set out the plan to find a commercial operator for the dementia care nursing home. In August, a report updated the committee on the commercial offers received from potential operators. The purpose of this report is to confirm the final stages of that process. It will authorise the Director of Place, in consultation with myself and Councillor Fiona Bolt, the portfolio holder for adult social care, to agree final terms, and it will also authorise an increase to the capital allocation for the project. The details of the bids received and the capital allocation are in exempt annexes, and as always, if members wish to discuss these details, we would have to go into private session. But for now, I will just move the recommendations at the front of the report on page A1. Councillor Bolt, would you second those?
Yes, I'm happy to second those.
Thank you. So before I move to debate, a reminder that this item has exempt material associated with it in Annexes 1 and 2. If you consider that you can't debate the matter without explicitly referencing the exempt material in the exempt annexes, please indicate by putting your name in the chat function, and I will put to the committee whether or not we move into private session. I'm taking it that we don't need to discuss the exempt annexes because there are no names in the chat function. Are there any councillors who would like to speak? If you wish to, please put your names in the chat function. Thank you. Councillor Davis. Councillor Davis seems to have left the meeting. I'm sure he'll be back shortly. Councillor Davis, are you with us?
I do apologise. I pressed completely the wrong button. I do apologise. Well, I'm back quickly.
Good.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I don't really want to discuss the details of this because we've had a fairly extensive briefing from officers on this outside this meeting in view of the fact that there was some exempt material. We on our side, I don't think it becomes a surprise to you, are not supportive of this particular approach to this. Because I think we've debated ourselves both within meetings and offline. We felt that the approach that we've taken is not that which was originally intended, which was to appoint somebody to run the home before you enter into the design. And therefore we're very unhappy about where this has ended up. It's just a basic thing. We just don't think it's good to start building when you don't know what you're going to do with a building, which I think is the problem. So we won't be supporting this. The only question I'd have for the administration is, after 2.5 years, it's a bit surprising we've got to this stage, because I would have thought, and maybe this is a reflection on all of us in the last 2.5 years, it's not just on the administration, it's us as well. I've got to ask the question, why we've not been more questioning of this as it's moved forward over those 2.5 years, and why it is that if this is the place we're going to end up, we didn't, some of us, stop it before we got to this stage. So we don't believe we're in a very good place with this. We appreciate that you've done what can be done with the commercial terms that you've got, but we can't be supportive of a scheme that doesn't at least do something for a few of the local residents.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davis. I would stress that the need for dementia care nursing home was established under your administration, and that need has not gone away, that dementia has not, unfortunately, found a cure in that period, that it's estimated that around about 1,500 residents in our borough suffer from dementia, and that those who need nursing care are usually at an advanced stage in this very cruel disease. And we think it's very important that residents in Kingston can access high quality dementia care, nursing care, when they're in those final stages of this disease. That, you know, whether it's your mother, your father, your grandparents, your partner, it's important that you can visit them, that it's easy for them to maintain contact with their family. So this project has a huge benefit to the community in that it produces and it provides that kind of quality of care in Surbiton, in the heart of our borough. I think the business case for the nursing care home, which we signed when the construction company, when we signed the construction contract in December 2019, was based on us just running one nursing facility, essentially a startup. And even pre-COVID, we know that that was very challenging. But the pandemic has increased the risk beyond a place where we felt it was prudent to continue. The markets had changed. We have a duty to uphold the highest levels of financial prudence. And commercial decisions that we make in this council have got to be made within the parameters of what is financially prudent. So we assessed the risks, the change in the care market and the change in the property function as well. And assessing those risks, we felt that going ahead under the provision that had originally been considered was particularly unwise. Trying to have one facility alone, really due diligence led us to feel that we needed to seek an external operator who might have many facilities and much more resilience. So what I think we've done with this is to protect RBK's commercial position. It will provide a financial return for the public purse overall, and I think that it is justified. But thank you for your comments. Councillor Sumner.
Sorry, my apologies, Chair, struggling with the buttons. Yeah, I want to speak on this. It's not an area that I'm an expert in. I've never been, social care has never been the thing that particularly was anything that I was ever involved with to begin with. But I've been increasingly concerned about how this project has played out over time. And I think we can all agree that it is a bit of a mess at the moment. And I don't think it's been handled particularly well. And I'm not saying I'm not pointing fingers as to whose fault that is. I'm just saying that that's a situation that we're in. I'd like to, and I draw from the last time that I spoke on this a few months ago. So in the report at the beginning, in the recommendations, it says that this is to benefit the benefits to the communities, increased capacity for people with dementia in Kingston. Now, do we have a cast iron guarantee that those beds are all going to be dementia care beds and that they are all going to be for Kingston residents, or even that there is going to be a threshold of Kingston residents that will access this? Because last time we asked that was not the case. And so if that still isn't the case, if those guarantees are not there, then we can't really, in all good conscience, put it in the report. Now, maybe it's changed, and please, I'm hoping that you tell me that it has changed and we are guaranteeing it's going to dementia care, and you are guaranteeing that there's going to be, a good percentage of beds promised for Kingston residents. And I really hope that is the case. We talk about obviously that you think it's going to deliver a benefit to the public purse. Well, that's good news. But we have to remember there's an opportunity cost on that as well, because the actual cost of any people that we place from Kingston in these beds is going to be higher than if we run it ourselves. So there is a negative cost as well as a potential benefit, which isn't really discussed fully in the reports. And I feel that's another point which perhaps we should be a bit more upfront about. If you look at the reports, I'm not going to go into any information that's in the pink papers. I'd like to ask the following things. Given that we're asked that the costs have been uplifted because there's been a change in layout, and yet potentially the layout may be changed again, why are we spending money potentially twice? Why don't we hold off, wait until you've got your preferred bidder in place, and then do the internal layout and do changes, rather than change it once and change it again? That really isn't a prudent way of spending money, in my opinion. And as you rightly say, we all have to spend money very wisely at the moment. And I feel that spending it twice is not necessarily the best use of money when we are so cash strapped. I would also like to say that it's some of the cost increase, that the reasons that it's for more, that the cost of the project has gone up, a lot of those were predictable as soon as a decision was made to seek an external partner for this. And so why were these risks not put in earlier reports? I feel that the sudden addition of costs, which could really be predicted from the outset, and the sudden addition of them, in my opinion, adds to that overview that this is a project which is out of control. And it really, it's, as I said, it's a mess. It's like we started off with great intentions of building a dementia care home, and now we've got the equivalent of building a hospital and giving it to Bupa. I really don't think that that's what the council's money should be invested in, personally. So we're asking to give delegated powers on a project which is already, in my opinion, not performing particularly well. And I'm sorry, I don't think we should be doing that. All of these decisions should be made by finance and contracts, with people who can actually look at in detail at what's going on, and it be approved by elected members. I don't think having delegated powers on this is the right way to go forward, because I think, as I've as a lot of people would agree, this project is not going well. So I'd like an answer about whether we are guaranteeing that it will be for dementia care, an answer about whether Kingston residents are guaranteed places, and also I just want to express my concerns about asking to give delegated responsibility to council officers on a project which is already spiralling out of control. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You raised a number of points there, and I will try to deal with them all. If there might be some that might like to pick up, or some of the officers. So perhaps I'm not getting them in the order that you produced them, but I hope I'm covering everything. You say that it would be a higher cost to run this with a private provider than it would be if we ran it ourselves. Councillor Sumner, you have attended a number of these committee meetings, and we've been very transparent about costs. We've been very transparent about all of the disadvantages and advantages of the various models, business models that have been considered. So I'm really surprised to hear you say that, because I think we've outlined extremely clearly why the in-house option was rejected. Because when we modelled it, it proved to be more expensive than if the council simply procured beds on an open market. That would have put severe pressure on our adult social care budget. And if you add in the cost of setting up clinical governance and the uncertainty of COVID, it made no financial sense. So I think we can reject that absolutely out of court. You ask if it's going to be a dementia care home. Yes, it is going to be a dementia care nursing home. That's what we are, that we're looking for a provider who has that specialist knowledge. That's what this home will be. You're asking if there are beds guaranteed for Kingston residents. That isn't how, that's not how care homes work, that you guarantee beds for certain residents. But obviously our residents will have access to this home. And for our residents, that's a huge advantage because it's local. You asked, I'm just trying to read my notes to see if I can follow everything else you said. You wanted to know about why we were going to make changes twice. Well, we're not making changes twice to the layout. We're going to be making changes to the layout to satisfy the preferred bidder. We won't be making changes again once the preferred, in a second time. We were making changes for the preferred bidder. You talked about the costs increasing and how that could have been predicted, and you claimed that we were not transparent. I really reject that claim. I think we've been incredibly transparent on this project. And you say that we could have known all the costs. I don't believe that we could have known all the costs. I'm not sure that even at the beginning, even in May, when we were discussing this and COVID was in its first wave, I don't think we could have predicted how much the costs would rise because of COVID, but they have risen substantially as a result of COVID. And, you know, I can outline for you exactly why. I went through in some detail with the officers to work out why costs rose because of COVID. It was the supervision, an additional person on site, briefing people as they arrive, taking temperatures, policing social distancing, staggering their breaks, planning out the working areas to maintain social distancing, additional cleaning to welfare facilities, to offices, to hoardings, to handrails, to barriers, to plant and other equipment, additional welfare accommodation, additional time. For example, the piling subcontractor had to allow additional rigging and de-rigging time because of social distancing, additional signage, PPE. Other examples were increased cost. Precast concrete slabs became more expensive because there were breaks in the supply chain, and this material had to be sourced elsewhere at a higher cost, and so on. Now, if you were able to predict all of those aspects of it, then you're a better woman than me, because I was not able to predict all of those costs, and had I been able to, I'm sure we would have been able to be open in telling you all of that information. I don't know whether officers have anything to add to that, or whether Councillor Bolt would like to add. I think Councillor Bolt would like to come in. Please do.
I'd just like to add some stuff from the perspective of the residents. This home will be available to Kingston residents if they choose to use it. It's stressed to me that people have choice. You know, there is a choice directive. We can't force anyone to go into this home. We can't say, because we've got a bed here, you've got to go there. a lot of 70 to 75% of Kingston residents are self-funders. They will have access to this home. Those self-funders also get in the sort of residents who are at the stage of their illness that will go into this home will very likely, if they are a self-funder, be entitled to some form of the funded nursing care that goes when somebody requires nursing care. That will obviously reduce the costs to the residents who are self-funders. And then in addition, we've had an estimate that in this sort of dementia nursing home, about between 30 and 40% of the residents will be receiving continuing healthcare, which is funded by the NHS, and that will be available. You know, this will be a perfect place for people at that stage of their illness. It will be available for Kingston residents, and for Kingston residents who want to bring their relatives from outside the borough in because they need them to be close to them. That happens too. So this home is for our residents right in the heart of our borough, and it will be available for them.
Thank you very much. Would officers like to contribute at this point?
Chair, it's Helen Coombs here. Shall I just add in a little bit about the dementia?
Please do, please do.
Dementia, we know, we think about 48% at a national level of people in homes have got dementia. But we also know that a significant number of people in the general population and in nursing and residential care aren't diagnosed. They may have behaviours, they may have a whole series of things, but it won't formally be diagnosed as dementia. When the CQC register a home, they look at what they're specialising in, and for dementia there are certain requirements in terms of mental health, so they will need to have registered nurses with the competencies to work in mental health. There will be expectations about certain interventions that they can offer. So I think you can be assured that this home will be working and specialising in the whole spectrum of dementia, and the CQC registration will expect them to be able to demonstrate that they've got the competency to do that. We've got other nursing homes within Kingston that specialise in other disorders, such as neuro and those things, and they will have a different level of competency. I thought that might be just helpful to clarify.
Thank you very much, Helen. I see that Councillor Sumner would like to come back. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I just really wanted to respond to some of the things that you said yourself, Chair. First of all, you misrepresented a lot of the things that I said, so I think it's only fair that I set the record straight. First of all, I would like to say, my question was, are you going to guarantee that these are going to be dementia beds? Because in May, we were told that they wouldn't guarantee that because it affected the offering we get from the market. I gave the same question about, could we guarantee that a percentage of these beds will be available to Kingston residents? I have an email from officers saying that they could do that, but not prepared to do that because it would affect the commercial offering. So it's not that we can't guarantee beds for Kingston residents, it's because it was indicated that it would affect the bidding process, and we wouldn't get quite as much money for it. Now, so I really think that's a very important point. It's not that we can't guarantee residents of Kingston will have access to these beds. It's that we have chosen not to guarantee that by putting in provisions in the contract. Now, of course, people have choice. No one's suggesting that they should be forced to go into a home in Kingston. But I do feel that it is because it's Kingston residents' money that has paid for this to be built. There should be an element of protection to say that at least 30% of the beds, for example, will be guaranteed to Kingston residents. And I feel that that is a prudent way of ensuring the future use to make sure that Kingston residents benefit from the money, which, let's face it, it's their tax money that paid for this, that they will benefit from it and get some insurance of that. Now, you made a great deal of the increased inflated costs that were due to COVID. Yes, you know, I agree, those weren't, but they were not the only things that have increased the cost. One of the big increases in costs is when we decided to go to an external provider, was making sure we can get a transferable warranty. Now, that was predictable. The moment we looked at going to an external provider, that was predictable. So that should have really been included much earlier. And that is one of my points on here. There are a lot of things that could have been included a lot earlier. Along with a transferable warranty, you say that it's not being changed twice, but we have a cost in here for in that amount, and I'm not going to say the amount of the uplift that we're asking for into this project. One of the things in there is for a change in the layout. Now, how do we know what the change in layout is if we haven't picked a preferred provider as yet? Because surely each preferred bidder will have a preferred layout. And yet you're saying that it's not going to be changed twice. But what I'm seeing is we've got a figure in here because some layout changes had to happen straight away. And then later, when you look at the details of the bidding process, each one of them has said that they wanted to changes. So I'm sorry, I'm maybe missing something here. But how can you have a cost in there for changing a layout in accordance to a provider's needs who we haven't even selected yet? Unless you have selected it behind the scenes and you're just not saying that. So unless you have predetermined that already, I don't know. But you can't put a budget, you can't put it in the budget unless you know what those changes are going to be.
Thank you. I think you've made your point. I think Helen Coombs would like to come back. So Helen, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So just to come back round to the choice directive. So the choice directive is really, really important. So the local authority funds care, but it has to offer people choice, and people make choice in their families. And there are a range of other places within Kingston that they may choose. They may choose to have somewhere out of Kingston that's nearer their own family. They may choose to, there's a particular type of intervention or a particular size of home that they want to live in. And all of those things, particularly when it comes to dementia, are really important that we protect that choice directive. So the second part of that is that even if, and this is where we have to have the best value commitment as well. So even if you booked beds, which would have to be subject to a procurement exercise, there is a question that if people then choose to live elsewhere, which they have the right to do, you are paying twice for a bed. So it's really, really important that we protect that choice directive. On the second point of that as well is that when we look at this particular home, we think that particularly because it will be high quality, because of the core design, for complex dementia, it will bring capacity in that the NHS particularly will find very attractive in terms of those very complex, some of whom are end-of-life care.
Thank you very much, Helen. I think that we've dealt, I think, as much as we need to with this item. If there's nobody else who wants to speak, I would just like to conclude by concurring with what Helen said. I can't see that there could ever be a justification for paying twice for the same residence bed. That does not seem to me to be financially prudent, and asking, as Councillor Sumner did, for a 30% guarantee of the certain category of residents to have those beds would give us a headache. I think Councillor Kirsch would like to come in before we go to the vote.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to mention that we should not lose sight here as well. We are delivering a dementia care nursing home, which surely our residents will benefit and have that choice to be there. We offer greater availability for our residents. And on additionally, we have a viable option found in the end. So there will be even a return, positive return for the council. So I think all in all, this is not in any way as negative a project as it might have occurred during this debate so far. So hence, I just wanted to highlight again that I think it's a positive project with a positive outcome. And I also wanted to thank officers with all the hard work they have put into getting us where we are here, and also for doing all the negotiations with the bidders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirsch. And I think before we conclude, it's worth just reflecting on the financial context to this whole project. You know, I don't really need to remind people in this meeting that the government's contribution to the council's budget is zero, that we are totally dependent on council taxpayers and on business rates, and that 57 pence out of every pound that our council taxpayers spend goes on social care, either on adult social care or on social care for children. And currently, because of COVID, we find ourselves in what I would describe as a COVID trap, that COVID has reduced the income that we are getting from our residents, from council taxpayers, as many people are furloughed and many people are losing their jobs. So we're in this trap where our residents' needs are increasing because of COVID, but our pot of money is shrinking. And at that point, I think we have to be ever more prudent in the way that we spend council money. I mean, any of us who've had relatives who've ever needed to go into care know how expensive it is. You know, you don't get much change from £1,000 a week. It's incumbent upon us to spend public money wisely. I don't think any of us would waste our own money on projects that we thought were going nowhere, and we wouldn't want to waste our neighbours' money either. So I would commend this project as financially prudent and bringing a benefit to those people who need dementia care at the end and the most difficult period of the progress of this disease. If anybody, I don't know whether we are in a position where we could unanimously agree this. If anybody would like to go to a vote, please could they put their name in the chat function. Thank you. So Councillor Davis has indicated that he would like to go to a vote. So I will ask Fiona to ask members how they wish to vote.
Thank you, Chair. I will be taking a vote on the recommendations set out on page A1 of the agenda and call councillors alphabetically. Councillor Bolt.
For.
Councillor Davey.
For.
Councillor Davis.
Against.
Councillor Dunstone.
For.
Councillor Fram. Councillor Fram.
Apologies, against.
Councillor Gander. For. Councillor Kerr.
For.
Councillor Kirsch.
For.
Councillor Moll.
For.
Councillor Shaper.
For.
Councillor Sweeney.
For.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendations are carried with 9 in favour and 2 against.
Thank you very much. Let's move on now to item 4 on the agenda, which is the Rough Sleepers Initiative contract, KCAH, and Councillor Davey will introduce this item.
Yes, if possible, I'd like to introduce the next 2 papers together because they really do work together. And many of you will know KCAH. You know they're the winners of Kingston's Best Charity Business Awards in 2019. They've come across Sophie Mayer, who was a national finalist of the Women in Housing Awards 2019. She ran the night shelter and is involved in the projects detailed in this paper. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank KCAH and thank SPEAR for all their volunteers who work for them and raise money for them. They've done a fantastic job. They continue to do a fantastic job in a very, very difficult environment. They represent Kingston at its best, caring for everybody in our community. I'd also like to thank the officers for drafting this report and compiling the bids for MHCLG. It seems a very high-pressure hand-to-mouth existence. Central government announces the possibility of grant funding in incredibly short timeframes, and it's all hands on deck to get the application in. And KCAH and SPEAR co-produced this with the officers, these bids. They worked with them to work out because they know the people on the ground far better than anybody else in our community because they've worked with them for years. SPEAR's been working with people for 30 years. MHCLG was aware of KCAH and SPEAR throughout the process. All along, they received monthly reports and outcomes. They've always known exactly where the money went and what it was spent on. Every month they were given reports. They knew exactly what was going on. Along the way, the reporting regulations changed, and these papers recognise that change and asked the council to agree to comply with those new regulations. But what we want to do, if you think about it, many of us are here because we want to care for the most vulnerable in our community. Some of us are here in politics because of the most wanting to look after the most vulnerable in our community. I'm asking the committee to enable the council, KCAH and SPEAR to look after Kingston's most vulnerable, our rough sleepers, and approve the resolutions in this paper.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davey. I don't know whether any officers would like to add to Councillor Davey's introduction. If not, I will move the recommendations at the front of the report on page B1. And Councillor Davey, were you suggesting that we vote on both together?
Could do one. I don't know whether it's possible just do one and then the other. I won't be reintroducing. Okay. They were joint applicants. They were jointly. The whole thing was done jointly, and the actual projects they run are very integrated.
Yes. So I think, I'm not sure if I'm getting advice from Democratic Services on this, but I think we'll vote on them separately. So I will. I'll move the recommendations at the front of the report on page B1. And Councillor Davey, are you happy to second them?
Yes.
Thank you. Can members indicate using the chat function if they would like to speak? So I have Councillor Sumner and Councillor Gander. So Councillor Sumner, you go first.
Thank you. Listening to Councillor Davies' introduction and actually reading what the resolutions are, they don't actually match. So I know that both organisations do great work, and what we're going to discuss now has got nothing to do with those amazing organisations. The actual resolution is to actually retrospectively approve a contract that was awarded in 2018 and then extend that contract. I don't have a problem with the individual providers having the contract. They're both good organisations. But what my problem is, and again we're back to this whole thing of what a mess that this council is in, is we've got a situation where very substantial contracts were awarded without any process, did not follow contract standing orders, did not follow any standing order regarding wavering of any kind of competitive tendering. There was actually no paperwork submitted. And not only that, the council did not publish these large contracts on its own transparency data website. So they were not published. Now, can I just remind everybody that that is actually against the law. We have a legal obligation under the Act in 2015 to actually publish all of our contracts over a certain amount to the public. That is a legal imperative. And we haven't done that. And this is not the only situation where this has happened. Where officers have actually not followed the process, not followed standing orders, and haven't even published the details. We're even talking, we've got the same situation with the Ian Manders contract, where they've not followed process. It's been awarded to someone without any process, the paperwork not completed properly, and it's taken 8 months to get to even near the bottom of what's happened there. And this is the same thing that's happening here. So I would like to know, given that none of this information was published, as it has to be by law, what is the paid head of service doing about our contract team? There is a huge problem.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. Councillor Sumner, I think you've asked your question. Councillor Davey, would you like to answer?
I can answer part of it. What we've got is a change in national regulations. So it's not that the council is disorganised. It states in the paper that the regulations, the reporting regulations have changed. Now that is not the fault of Kingston Council. There's something called national government. And national government lays down those regulations. And what we're asking you to do, asking everyone here, is to abide by national government's regulations. Now, as for competitive tendering, if you're under a sense of urgency, you've got hardly any time to make this application. If we go out to competitive tendering, we will miss our opportunity. What is more important? Making sure that rough sleeping, as the people who are rough sleeping get the support they need, and hopefully what we want to go on for is end rough sleeping. I consider that as crucially important, rather than going out through a competitive tendering process, which may not actually lead to anything. We will not get any money. We will not get a bid in. We will get nothing. And those people will be left on the street. They're discarded again. That is not what I came into politics for. I came into politics to look after the weakest in our society, the people who have no voice. And they're the people on our streets. And KCAH and SPEAR do precisely that. They give these people a voice and they give them the support they need. I'm not interested in shilly-shallying around and not helping people and hiding, as Councillor Sumner suggests we are doing. I'm in for getting out there and taking action to end rough sleeping and street homelessness in Kingston.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davey. And I would just like to mention to Councillor Sumner that it is not acceptable to mention individuals who are nothing to do with the report that we are considering tonight. I think officers may like to make a contribution at this point.
No, Chair, nothing to add. Sorry, Chief. Nothing to add at this point.
No? Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Gander.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually interested in what this contract delivers, and I'd really like to know a little bit more detail about the type of work that KCAH and SPEAR will be doing under the contract. There's a reference to support workers, and there's even reference to navigators, and it's a little bit obscure to me. So really just like to know on the ground what are these two organisations doing. Thanks.
If I may, it's really exciting. It is so exciting, this project, and what we're able to do. If you imagine it, often what's happened with rough sleeping, with people from outside decide, we know what's good for you, and it'll be done to them. What we've managed to do is change that turn it all around. We've had ethnographers go in and talk to people and work out what they need and the way they see them, rough sleepers, and work out what they want. And actually, what they're not saying is, I need a roof over my head. There's a lot more. They need a lot more support than that. Being a rough sleeper is not just not having a roof over your head. There's the social isolation and the other pressures, the loneliness that hits you. But also, providing a roof over somebody's head is not just it's not the solution. You've actually got to provide them with support. And that's exactly what KCAH and SPEAR will be doing. They're going to be working with them in very specialised hostels, 24-hour care, 7 days a week, enabling people to live in community again, to simple things like learning to cook again. Because if you've been living on the street, on whatever you can beg and scratch for a living, you have lost those skills for cooking. But they're teaching them to cook, giving them the support. They're also going to be with other people who need less support. Or they're going to be being outreach into the community, where we've managed to get people into self-contained accommodation, so we can give them floating support, so that enable them to maintain their tenancies and to stay long-term off the street. These people have been failed repeatedly by our society, and this is giving us an opportunity to get them inside, to get them on board, and actually to end rough sleeping in Kingston. And that is what I believe many of us here want to do. We don't want to see people sleeping on our streets.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davey. Councillor Sumner, you would like to come back to respond. You may, but I would ask you to be brief.
Yes, I will. As I stated at the beginning, I have no questions about the individual companies or organisations that are involved. My question is what we are doing, because by not publishing, when these contracts were taken up, by not publishing that, We have broken the, let's have a look, the Local Government Transparency Code of 2015. We have broken that law. Now, I'm sorry, yes, the projects are amazing and no one's saying the project shouldn't go ahead, but we have broken the law, and we are just trying to basically cover that up with this. And actually, I think that's a really serious matter. Of course, it's important that we help homeless people off the street. No one's disputing that. But what I want to know, and what I want some assurance, is what are we doing about the constant breaking of the regulations and law? Now, it's no trivial matter not to publish your contracts. We have a legal obligation to do that, and it wasn't done. And rather than just ignore that fact, I think we should be acknowledging it and trying to fix the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. I don't know if there's an officer who would like to take that point.
Hi, Leader. Yes. Thanks for allowing me to speak. So, Councillor Sumner has raised a number of points. I don't believe in terms of standing orders and issuing of contracts there is a systemic issue at this council. There's always work to be done to tighten up on governance. We're happy to look into the issues that she's raised and revert back to Councillor Sumner.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Ian. So at this point, I don't see any other names on the chat. So I think it's time to decide whether we can vote on this. Please, as before, if you would like to go to the vote, please put your name in the chat function. It seems that nobody does want to go to a vote, so I think on that basis we can agree this unanimously. So thank you very much for that. And let us now move on to the next item on the agenda, which again is being introduced by Councillor Davey, who's indicated that she doesn't have anything further to say. So I'm hoping that we can now go and just vote separately on the items that were outlined on the agenda on page C1. So I would move the motion. Councillor Davey, can you second it?
Yes.
And can I assume that that will also be passed unanimously? Please put your name in the chat function if you disagree with that. Thank you. I'm making the assumption that we can agree that unanimously. So, so thank you very much, everyone. As there are no urgent items authorised by the chair, that concludes the business this evening. The time is 20:17. Thank you very much and good night.
Thank you.